All right, everyone, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. My name is Cindy Black. I'm the Executive Director of Fix Democracy First, and you are at our weekly Democracy Happy Hour. We have a special guest tonight that's going to talk about the Center for Wise Democracy, Jim Ruff. Jim Ruff is co-founder of Center for Wise Democracy. He's a social innovator and author of the 2002 book, Society's Breakthrough, releasing essential wisdom and virtue in all the people. In the early 1980s, Jim developed dynamic facilitation, a way to facilitate individuals and groups to face impossible seeming problems creatively and achieving breakthroughs. As he taught seminars in dynamic facilitation around the world, these sessions led to the Wisdom Council process, a way to dynamically facilitate large systems of people to face impossible seeming problems, achieve breakthrough progress, and by doing so, establishing a new form of democratic governance. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Cindy. That's really nice. Okay, I'm going to try and go to my thing here, and I'm going to go to share. There's my desk. Okay. I hope you can see that. Good. Thanks, Cindy. So I really believe American democracy is in the process of collapsing, and we need a breakthrough. And this breakthrough needs to be accessible. We got to be able to do it. It needs to be fast acting and long lasting. And then all these democracy first issues that you guys have been working on, that I'm very thrilled that you are, they need to be addressed, all the we need tos. And the authoritarian threat, the corruption throughout government, electoral college. I mean, I don't think my vote's ever counted in a presidential election. I don't know about yours, but if you live in a swing state or maybe even a swing county, maybe it is. But no, it doesn't matter whether I vote or not. Washington's going to vote for the blue team, which is fine with me, but yeah. But the other big thing is that we need to transform our system. We have a system that we call democracy, but of course it isn't. It's a constitutional republic. And the cure to this is to have a real democracy, not in the sense of deliberative democracy or in the sense of direct democracy, but in the sense of where we all step back and think together and we come to some kind of unified viewpoint. And that, believe it or not, is possible. So, and then when I say it needs to be accessible, I want to talk about somewhere down the road, I want to tell you about the Wise Democracy Project, which is 8 steps. Each of the steps is beneficial to society. It has no downside that I can find, and we can do it. We just need money and a few people, a small number of people that get it, that can stay curious long enough that they slap their heads and go, holy smoke, this has to happen. So that's my goal in this talk, is a few of people to go, oh my God, this has to happen. Let's do what it takes to get it to happen. Let's see, I pushed a button and I don't think anything's happening. How come? Oh, maybe it did. Yeah, okay, most people think there are just two possible systems. They talk about autocracy and democracy. And what we call democracy is really a constitutional republic. I call them the triangle, the box, and the circle. If we stay in this two possible systems, the autocracy and the democracy, these monster problems are just going to consume us. There's going to be partisan war. There really will be violence. There really will be authoritarian. It's either going to be a dystopia of the authoritarian world, or we're going to have some kind of collapse in what we're doing, because there's fundamental problems with the constitutional republic design, which our founders 235 years ago, that's a beautiful design. They were awesome when they put that together. But we got a different system now. We have a different context, a different environment. So I don't see how we can have a system with a basis of competition in a time when we have to work together. And the competition is such. Now this is the three systems. I call them the triangle, box, and the circle. The great leader is the ultimate authority in the triangle system, and I talk about loga. The key is loyalty and obedience to this great authority. And that's what you find, is that the loyalty is required. And if we're going to go back to the triangle system, loyalty is required. We have limited freedom. We have kind of a caste system. And truth is what the leader says. It doesn't matter what science says or the courts. They don't really matter much. And so we, 235 years ago, we had a brilliant group come together in a marvelous facilitative moment, and they got rid of the leader, George Washington, standing there and saying, "Hey, I don't want to be that guy." And so we had a moment of time, an amazing moment of time, and they replaced it with a social contract, the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. But in time, that sets up a competition as our basis, because it's like the rules of the game. And people start cheating. The people who get all the money, they're already won. It's like Monopoly. They've already won. They already won. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these guys have already won the game of Monopoly. And now you and I are just going around the board. We get slammed when we hit Park Place and, Reading Railroad and whatever. It can't work. So, but we have this system. We had it for 235 years, and I think it's crumbling now, frankly. We're objective truth. We had courts. We have science. We try and tether ourselves to the truth, the real truth. But as you can see, there's a number of people floating around, and each system structures us to be a different kind of person. And so there are loyalty-oriented, loga people, triangle people, that voted for Trump. I mean, and it makes sense. That's the world they want to. That's the world that they imagine themselves to be living in. And others, I think that's kind of the red team and the blue team at this point. The blue team it used to be the red team was on board with the box system, but now we have a loss. It's either the red team, the Republicans, seem to be coalescing around the triangle system, and the blue team seems to be coalescing around the social contract, hitting ourselves in the head, saying, "What is going on? How could these people possibly vote for this guy?" So, what is possible is to make this transition to the next system, and the next system is really based in a certain kind of conversation that allows us to create a we the people. In other words, in that beautiful moment that happened in the 18th century when the founders met, they met in the spirit that we're trying to achieve now. They got it, that they called it parliamentary procedure, and they did voting, but they knew they had to have everybody. They knew they had to have all the now let's be fair here, because it didn't include Native Americans, and it didn't include blacks, and it didn't include women, and it didn't include non-property holders, and so forth. But of what they thought was the world, they needed everybody. They needed all the states, they needed all the delegates, they needed all the people, all the citizens, the enfranchised citizens. So they had one of these, a circle moment in time, and then they set us up in a different system where we don't have that. We're not trying to reach what's best for everybody, or what's best for the seventh generation, or what's best for society. We just vote, and we have lots of special interests that just are voting for their special interest. So what I want to share today is a way to make this transition, whether it's the triangle or the box, the transition to the circle. And I believe that it's something that can be facilitated. And facilitation is a marvelous process of change. We think in terms of there being top down or bottom up. Those are the kind of change we're talking about. Well, it's a whole nother kind of change, and that's to facilitate the whole system to transform itself. And like I say, there's 8 steps. They're doable, they're accessible. We don't need lots of people to do it. We just need enough money, and we need somebody's trying to get in. Yeah, we need enough money, and we need a few people that get it, and then we can just start what I call the Wise Democracy Project. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't go when I want it to. Boom. Oh, it worked. Okay. I believe this transformation must happen. There's really not an option. The 2 options we've got are dystopia and a collapse. But this is doable. And really what it requires, it's almost like it's what the indigenous peoples throughout history have always done. It's that they stopped every so often and they met in the kiva, or they had the peace pipe, or they sat around, and they knew they had to have everybody. And they were in a different quality of thinking because the kiva and the peace pipe and the ceremonies helped them get to the quality of thinking that I call choice creating. The crazy thing is it doesn't have a name anymore. I mean, there's no word for it anymore. So when the anthropologists go back and look at what the governing process of the indigenous peoples, they use the wrong words. They use words like deliberation. They deliberated. They dialogued. They discussed. They made their decision. They did creative thinking maybe. But they missed the point of the conversation. We live in the box system, which gives us these words, but the words miss the point. And so what I'm going to try and go back to that. Not sure how I go there.
Your arrow button should help you go back and forth.
Yeah, I keep pushing. Yeah, I can't. Okay, here it comes. So choice creating is where people address the biggest issues creatively from the heart. It's where we all gather and we seek what's best for everybody, that work for everyone, and there's no result possible other than all of us coming to the shared conclusions. It's got to be unity when we finish. And this is not decision making, discussion, dialogue, etc. Oh, good, I'm going. So that's one. There's really 3 social innovations that I want to talk, that I'm pointing to. One is the nature of facilitation as a change process. One is choice creating, the quality of thinking we need to establish. And the third is dynamic facilitation, which can reliably evoke choice creating. And I'll just tell you briefly how we do it. And I've taught a lot of seminars on this, and it's really like, the seminars are really how do we solve impossible to solve problems? Because once you get into choice creating, that's what you're doing. You're facing some monster issue, and you come to some kind of unified understanding about what it is, what we want, what our strategy is, where do we need to go. And it's the kind of conversation we all want to be in our democracy, but we can't be because we were set up 235 years ago to be in a fight. And it's not going to work. We can't continue to have half the people really angry after every election or hurt that's not a way to work that's not a collectively intelligent strategy. So anyway, what happens in dynamic facilitation is everybody sits in a half circle. It's for a small group process, okay? 4 charts, and the charts are basically solutions, data, concerns, and problem statements. So whatever anybody says goes up on the chart, and people are looking at the charts, they're facing the charts, and they work on it like a puzzle. But the energy is the agenda. So when somebody's really wired about something, we usually turn to that person and ask them to talk. And so feelings are paramount, and solutions. So when you talk in this way, solutions often come first. And the dynamic facilitator assures safety for everybody, especially from any kind of judgment. So everybody stays in a creative zone, and shifts and breakthroughs happen. So you're working on some big monster issue like, I don't know, healthcare or immigration or something, and everybody's got different views. And the dynamic facilitator is helping whatever anybody says to go up on those charts. And then people, but we're following energy. So if somebody's got animated, somebody wants to say, "Whoa, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard." You capture that idea and you say, "Well, look, do you have a concern? Let me write that concern down on the page of concerns, on the chart of concerns, and tell me what your concern is." And so what we're doing is anything that bubbles up from people has a place. And it's part of the puzzle that we're solving. And it changes. People then change. They grow. They come together. They have insights, and they realize what's going on. So unity is the only possible result. When there's a blue or green thing on the bottom, then I can't move it. There it is. I did work. Okay. So I want to tell you about the Wise Democracy Project. Just leave that. Those are the 8 steps. Make sure I did that. Yeah. So they use the two social innovations, dynamic facilitation and choice creating. What we do is, first step is we're going to gather just us. And just us is the few people that slap their heads and say, "Holy heck, this has to happen." Who get it. We need to have this. Step 2. We identify the first monster problem, some impossible seeming problem, like in this country, it might be the gulf between the blue and the red, or how we do our election process, or I call them monster problems, these existential problems that we have to solve, we have to face. And we can identify it in different ways. If we need money, we can have the person that has the most money and gives it to us can do it. But ideally, what we want to do, of course, is have a program where what they're doing in Austria when they do this, and they have it in their constitution now, and it's working great guns. They have the governor of the state of Vorarlberg picks the issue one time, and the next time, one of the political parties picks. But it rotates between all 4 political parties. So it goes the governor, one of the parties, and there's 4 parties. They go through. But what's happened is they also have, like a citizen initiative process, what they have is where if you, as a citizen, get just 1,000 signatures, that's all you need, the state will sponsor a wisdom council on your issue and not the governor's and not the political party. So it's really awesome. Anyway, so that's how you pick the issue. Or we can do something like that. And then they randomly select, maybe just 10 to 16 citizens from the nation. It doesn't have to be a big group. Probably for the national, it needs to be 12 to 16. But you gather them and you take their picture, for one thing, because that is a symbol of all of us. And then they go into a room and they're dynamically facilitated for just a little while, 2.5 days maybe. But they will emerge with their hands up like this, pumped, because they can't believe how we assembled these great people that managed to reach unity. And of course, it really isn't the people, it's as much as it is the process. And so people will come out of the room and they'll be absolutely pumped, and they'll tell So the dynamic facilitation is used to spark the unity, and the Wisdom Council then walks out to a live national community meeting, and they have a live audience, maybe hopefully with broadcast media attending, maybe with celebrities in the audience, and they present to this live audience, and they tell the story of how they got to their conclusion and what their conclusion is. And then people turn their chairs, and of course, if they're a broadcast audience, they can be in their church or in a tavern or wherever they are, and they can talk about it. And the Wisdom Councils, the small groups meet and talk, and they basically say, well, yeah, why aren't we doing that? Here's a way to get unity of all of us. And maybe it doesn't happen the first time so much, but the second Wisdom Council, the third, what we want them is to be, Wisdom Councils to be every month or so. And so, but the small groups, when you have random people and they reach a unified viewpoint, and they report it and they tell their story, the story helps build the context that, hey, we're all still building these ideas. The Wisdom Council isn't done. The Wisdom Council is really all of us. And so we can establish a national conversation, including all of us, that over time, each month gets closer and closer to a shared unity about what we're doing. And we've got 12 years experience with the Wisdom Council process in Austria, some states of Austria and cities. So this works. And so but we haven't done it. They've done, experiments. We've done experiments nationally in Austria and Germany both. But it isn't, and in the U.S., I talked to the wind. It's really more difficult here. But we have to provide, what we want is to structure things so that when this small Wisdom Council process that this Wisdom Council meets in the spirit of choice creating, we need to export that spirit to the whole system. And we've got ways to do it because the Wisdom Council is sharing the story of how they got there, and it's ongoing. And so it's a conversation that has power. So you get a chance to be in this conversation, and it helps bring the spirit of the conversation to everybody that it's choice creating. And then we do it again next month, and we do it again the month after, and so you can work on different issues or the same issue, keep evolving it. And what begins to happen is that really what we've got is one conversation of all of us and a way to articulate our conclusions. And the one conversation includes elected officials, it includes celebrities, it includes, everybody, all of us. The special interests, the CEOs. We're all in this we the people conversation, reaching unified perspectives. And before we even get there, of course, we're providing a voice of the people to legislators so they get to act. So if a legislator actually wants to serve the public interest, as one of them said in Austria, the Wisdom Council is wind at my back. Another time they said, I remember when they were talking about immigration and the Wisdom Council says, hey, we can help these people. The politician said, no politician could have said that. There was nobody in the room of the political people that could have said that. So it provides, we've got some experience with this in the Austrian world, but the one difficulty is that they basically present to the elected officials rather than the public. So it isn't a strong public conversation, but it has amazing impact anyway. So, pushing buttons, I'm pushing those little things. I don't know how to make it, I moved it, okay. No, I went back. I don't, I can't make it go. I'm pushing everything I can. Oh well. Oh, something happened. Well, we're going backwards, huh? Hey, all these are happening, I think. All right, I'm going to just keep talking. I wrote that. I have it here as my thing. So I want to talk to you about the immense benefits that come out of this. And I'm just going to, oh, here we go. Good. So the benefits come in many, many, many different ways. You know, people always look at me and say, Jim, so what do they say? They're just a random group of people and they speak. What are they going to, how's that going to affect anything? That is not what we're talking about here. I mean, it is true that they have content. They do say something. But the value comes in so many ways. One way is that each of the 8 steps is already a benefit. It creates a symbol of we the people. It generates interest in the biggest issues. It generates local conversations, etc. There's no downside to any of this. And the process is huge impact. It affects people deeply. It heals the partisan divide. Now we've got the blue team talking to the red team finally. Not within the old system, which is set up for competition. In other words, you can do braver angels till you're blue in the face, but I'm sorry, it's great at the local individual level, but it's just not going to affect the national level. But this is the national conversation that reaches beyond, to the blue, to the red, to everybody. It heals the partisan divide. It builds shared perspectives. It empowers people. People, finally, your voice gets heard. My voice gets heard. And it has a trauma healing effect. I did a TV show. I have a TV show where we talked about this with a psychiatrist. Yeah, when you talk at this level and you're working on from the heart with feelings on these monster issues, yeah, I mean, if you were with victims of genocide or whatever, here's a way to start working through this stuff. So the process, the steps, the process, and the content. Of course, the content is we're going to generate actions from this. We're going to say, here's what the strategy is we need to do going forward. And people act. Not only does government act, and government's so limited, it can only just come up with laws, taxes and things. I mean, that's a policy. Government is not the end all and be all. If we, the people, come to a shared conclusion, oh my God, we're on our way. We're starting to be a collectively intelligent society where we can start dealing with these problems. We're trashing the planet. It's so crazy how we've structured ourselves to assure that we will trash the planet because everybody's working to maximize their profits and paying zero attention to the collective well-being. How are we going to do that? We can't do that anymore. There has to be a visit every so often about the collective well-being. And if one of the the monster benefit is the system. By transforming the system, stuck in the box, the collapsing, stuck in the triangle system, dystopia, to moving to the circle system, now we're adding the missing we the people, where together we are we the people. If we notice that we're all together, heck, there's no higher authority than that. We could rewrite the Constitution. We can rewrite the electoral system. We can rewrite, this is how we deal with the media silos. This is how we deal with AI. This is how we deal with you name it. I mean, you name the problem. And the other thing, it's really a new economics as well. Because if you have an economic system where you don't pay any attention, it's all about using the commons resources to maximize your profits, well, you're screwed. That's it. As soon as you get to the limits of the resources, you're in desperate shape. So how do we get past that to where our system is intelligent, that we not only have individual intelligence, which we got in spades, but we have collective intelligence? That has to happen. Has to happen. So, okay, so we get a new governance, new economics, new culture. And then what I try and ask people to do sometimes is just, before I talk about this, is to make your biggest possible wish. And then it becomes achievable. The solution strategies that are out there that need to happen, this becomes, it's really neat to show how this would be a path to achieving your biggest wish for, that you've come up with. Like the UN has come up with these strategic development goals. They got 17 of them, I think. Well, yeah, we do this globally. We can do this strategic development goals. It's just that this is how you do it. Worked. Good. Okay. So here's kind of our system. The U.S. Constitution is kind of supposed to be at the top. And we got the Senate and the House of Representatives, the President, the Supreme Court, and then the Senate and the House of Representatives, they make the laws. The President and Supreme Court kind of is supposed to enforce them. And then you've got down there, way at the bottom, the people. And they're divided and manipulated. They don't have any power. That's nothing. That's a nothing burger. And then you end up with these corporations and special interests kind of filling the blank. And they, of course, influence the Supreme Court, the President, the House of Representatives, the Senate, all that special interest money. And we end up with we, the corporations, now in charge of the Constitution. They've remodeled it to fit their needs and how it's interpreted. But right now, the people are divided and manipulated. If the Wise Democracy Project, we can create that, we the people, that trumps the whole mess. And I use that word intentionally. Here's a way to trump that whole mess. Once there's a we the people, where we have mutual respect and we're working together and we have a way to articulate what needs to happen and we have a way to nod and say, yes, I think so too. We can do a survey and see to what extent people are resonant with this result. That's not hard. And you look around and you realize, my God, everybody's on board with this. Well, legislators figure that out and they just rush to do it. It turns things on its head. Now the legislation, now the government is working to support the will of the people. That has to happen. We have to be in this intelligent conversation. And all of this boils down to the lost conversation, that there's a kind of conversation that got lost somewhere along the way. All indigenous peoples knew that they had to step aside and step into the kiva and smoke the peace pipe, whatever, and come into the right spirit. The spirit where we're all going to come out with the answer and we're going to talk until we all, there's nothing more to say, that we all know what to do. Because you're going to go out on that hunt or whatever, and you need everybody at your back. So and we need that in our system also. Oh, that worked. So there are examples, and I've talked, first of all, this started for me. I mean, it didn't start for me there, but I had this experience in my background of being in a sawmill and using dynamic facilitation with just the day shift small group and the night shift small group. The machine center operators. And it was really easy for me to notice that, hey, the whole mill is in this conversation. Even though I'm only working with these two small groups, first of all, because of dynamic facilitation, the groups corresponded. They would come up with similar answers and similar perspectives. But all the 350 people in the mill soon as they identified a problem, they would start working on it. The people that weren't in the meetings would start working on it. And that always struck me as curious. It's like, my God, this is working bigger than I thought. And later, when I started working with the seminars and helping people solve impossible problems and pulling those together, that memory came back and realized, my gosh, yes, this is a way to make this work for society. And then, of course, we did experiments. We've done minor things. I mean, without any money, we really have never had any money, but here in the U.S. But so we always get some kind of volunteer group or something, and I'll teach a seminar. I'm a little bit beyond that now, but I teach a seminar, and the people then would try something locally and try experiments, and in cities we did schools and co-ops and government departments and corporations and conferences. In other words, we'd gather people before the conference who were going to come randomly, and they would meet for just a day ahead of time. And then they would come up with the plenary speech at the beginning. So here's these 12 people or something, 8 people, whatever. And they would speak to the conference and get it started. And then people would talk in small groups and basically go, wow, yeah, wow, that's well. We did one for instance, we did one for.
Hey, Jim, I hate to interrupt, but we only have a few minutes left, and I was hoping we get a couple questions in there.
Perfect. Okay, I apologize. I don't have my watch in front of me, so thank you. Yes. You want me to just race ahead or what?
Yeah, why don't you, so we can at least get a couple questions.
Okay, all right. So anyway, is there some other solution? I don't think so. That's basically, I mean, this is encouraging you to go to the Wise Democracy thing. There's lots of questions that are still remaining. How could this involve all citizens? How could they reach unity? How could we overcome special interest dominance? How could this transform the system? Anyway, that can be done. I'm not going to talk about it, but hopefully you have enough curiosity to carry forward and go try that. I mean, to look at the website especially and answer the questions and take some next steps. So let me just read this piece and then I'm done. Our choice seems to either be collapse or dystopia. Normal solutions can't help us out of this dilemma. There's a new option, and it's accessible. Just us can get it started. Just a few of us, I think, with money, of course. It makes things way better than what we had before. Plus, it's fast-acting, long-lasting, and has no identifiable risk. It's the Wise Democracy Project. The appropriate reaction when first learning about this is, holy heck, this must happen. To stay curious, please stay curious, keep answering your questions, and help bring this forward in whatever way you can. Thank you.
And I did put links to your website and your book in the chat, and I'll be sending that out later as well. So we just have about 6 minutes or so left. If we have a couple questions, there's been some chat, going on there, but if there's a couple of questions, let's go ahead and why don't you go ahead and stop sharing your screen there, Jim?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, so sure, thank you.
Jeremy, go ahead, ask your question.
Okay, well, I'm sold on what you're saying, so that's not an issue. But I'm interested in you sharing your experience of enrolling people in the process, getting people to get into it, or did they already have a problem that they wanted to address, and that's how they got interested, or was there another aspect to that?
Well, we've learned to pick the issue ahead of time. I wrote my book, which was called Society's Breakthrough. But I at the time, I thought it needed to be a constitutional amendment, and I thought it needed, that of course, if anybody if it was part of a constitutional amendment, you'd have people showing up. If you were randomly selected, one of the 12 people from the United States, you'd show up. But what we've learned is we need to, if we offer people a little bit of money, we get a totally different group. And but it is a struggle in a public setting to just make a phone call and say, hey, would you show up? You know, I mean, for an experiment in democracy, you're getting a really narrow group, but it's a tough sell because we all get phone calls and stuff all the time. But if you offer the money, you know, just a little bit, and people show up, and anyway, I think if once people know about it, we get more and more and more people coming. Yeah.
And what you're really talking about too is that I'm involved with a national group, citizen assemblies and deliberative allies working together on this. And this type of facilitation obviously would work in situations like that.
Well, it is work, but it's an entirely different thing. I have a chart in my website about the distinction between citizens assemblies and the Wisdom Council process. The Wisdom Council process is part of the box system. They make huge improvements. It's a wonderful thing in the box, but it's not helping us go to the circle. But it's great. I went to the very first modern Citizens Assembly in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I just went up for their reunion, 20th year reunion. So I got a chance to see it work, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, but it's completely different.
Good to know. All right, we have time for another question. Dick, go ahead.
Hey, Dick.
Hi, Jim. I haven't seen you for years, but
Many years.
well, one of the obvious big issues in this kind of thing is that you bring random people together and they're going to ask some really basic questions, and you're going to need some people with some real knowledge. The issues in our society are very deep, very complex. How are you going to assemble or draw on the right kind of expertise? So someone that says, well, I don't know about this, but let's try this idea. But how could they actually get some expertise so they make informed recommendations, or they can understand why there's an objection here or that has promise? Just how do you assemble the...
Let me jump ahead and answer because it's just a couple of seconds. It's not a recommendation. This is not recommending anything. This is a Wisdom Council. They meet, they share their shared perspective. It's what they think, and it's a reflection to the public. And the public says, oh no, they didn't get that right. They didn't, whatever, I mean, whatever. First of all, it's not the lowest common denominator anymore. This goes to the highest common denominator in the room of knowledge. And so when they speak, it's a wise comment, even if stuff they don't know. Like once in a while we have an hour presentation, they get to hear an hour about the topic. But the point isn't that they're experts, that they become informed and they recommend something. No, that's not what's happening. What we're doing is the most important thing they can do is facilitate the whole system conversation. Great question. Thank you.
And we got time for one last question from Alpana. Go ahead, Alpana.
Yeah, it is amazing presentation, but I just missed in the beginning because I had another meeting. Anyway, I just wanted to know from you that how do you transform people who have a different opinion and not ready to listen to you and your Wisdom Council process? So how do you change that with the Wisdom Council process?
You've been in an argument before, I bet. Have you? Have you been in an argument?
Yes.
Okay. Our system is structured to have an argument. And then when you're talking to me, you're not in an argument. You're in some other space. You can be creative and collaborative and whatever. We don't have a way to do that. It can be facilitated. We can have radical right-wing crazy people. We can have left-wing crazy people. We can have fundamentalist one religion, fundamentalist another religion. It doesn't matter. Once we get people in the room as individuals, nobody's there representing anybody. Nobody's there representing anything. They are people, and they're in the room, and it's a creative, collaborative conversation. And eventually we're looking at the puzzle on the walls, and we use our creativity to figure out how it can all come together. And then when they present, They just share the story of their puzzle solving.
Great. Well, I wish we had more time to take more questions, Jim, but we are
Thank you.
out of time. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I will be sharing all the links to Jim's information as well as all the links that I shared earlier from the articles. But thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
You and I will
Thank
be in
you.
touch, and I
Great.
appreciate your work. And thanks everybody for being here, and we'll be back next week. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.